You finally have time to relax. Nothing urgent is happening. There's no pressure, no immediate problem, no demand pulling your attention. And yet, instead of feeling calm, your mind stays active, alert, almost restless, like it's waiting for something. And the more you try to relax, the more unnatural it feels. You sit down, maybe you put something on in the background, maybe you try to disconnect for a bit, but there's this subtle tension underneath everything. Not intense, not overwhelming, but enough to stop you from fully settling into the moment. It feels like you're supposed to be doing something else, even when there's nothing to do. Your body is still, but your mind isn't. It keeps scanning, jumping between thoughts, looking for something to focus on, something to solve, something to prepare for. And when it doesn't find anything, it doesn't relax. It searches harder. That's the part that confuses most people. You assume that once the external pressure disappears, your mind will naturally calm down. That relaxation is the default state, and stress is something that only exists when there's a reason for it. But that's not how your brain works. Your brain doesn't relax just because nothing is happening. It relaxes when it feels safe to stop. And those are not the same thing. If your mind has been used to constant activity, constant thinking, constant adjustment, it learns to stay in that state even when the environment changes. It doesn't immediately recognize that things are calm now. It continues operating the way it has been trained to operate. So when everything slows down around you, your brain doesn't match that pace. It resists it. Because from its perspective, slowing down feels unfamiliar. And unfamiliar doesn't feel safe. Over time, your mind builds a pattern. It stays slightly ahead of the present moment, always anticipating what might come next, always preparing, always adjusting. That pattern becomes your normal state. So when you finally have nothing to prepare for, your brain doesn't interpret that as relief. It interprets it as uncertainty. And uncertainty triggers activity. That's why relaxation feels uncomfortable. Not because something is wrong, but because your mind doesn't know how to sit still without a purpose. It's used to movement, used to engagement, used to having something to work on. So when that disappears, it tries to recreate it. You start thinking about small things. Things you could do. Things you should do. Things you might have forgotten. It doesn't matter if they're important or not. What matters is that they give your mind something to latch onto. Because doing something feels more stable than doing nothing. This is where people get stuck. You think the problem is that you can't relax, so you try harder. You try to force yourself into a calm state. You try to clear your mind, slow your thoughts, create stillness. But the more you force it, the more resistance you feel. Because relaxation doesn't come from control. It comes from release. And if your mind has been conditioned to stay active, letting go doesn't feel natural. It feels like you're dropping something important, like you're missing something, like you're falling behind in a way you can't quite explain. So instead of relaxing, you stay in this middle state. Not fully active, but not at ease either. You scroll, you switch between things, you distract yourself just enough to pass time, but not enough to feel settled. You're moving, but without direction. You're resting, but without rest. And at the end of it, you don't feel refreshed. You feel drained. This happens because your brain never actually exited its active state. It just shifted into a different form of activity. The surface changed, but the underlying pattern stayed the same. Real relaxation isn't just the absence of action, it's the absence of internal pressure. And that pressure doesn't disappear just because your schedule opens up. It's built over time, through repetition, through patterns your brain has learned to rely on. If you've spent enough time in a state of constant thinking, constant evaluation, constant anticipation, your mind starts to believe that this is necessary. That staying active is what keeps things under control. So when you stop, it doesn't feel like rest. It feels like exposure, like you're letting something slip. That's why even quiet moments can feel uncomfortable. Silence doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like something is missing, like your mind should be filling the space with something useful. And if it doesn't, something feels off. So your brain fills it with thoughts, with small concerns, with reminders, with unfinished ideas. Not because they matter, but because they maintain the sense of activity your mind is used to. This is also why relaxation often feels delayed. At first, you can't settle. Then slowly, over time, your mind starts to soften. Your thoughts slow down. Your body catches up. But by then, the moment is almost gone. And you repeat the cycle again the next time. But here's the shift that changes how you see this. You don't need to force relaxation. You need to stop resisting stillness. Because what feels uncomfortable isn't the absence of activity. It's the unfamiliarity of it. Your brain has learned to associate stillness with uncertainty. So when you enter that state, it tries to pull you back into movement, back into thinking, back into doing. Not because you need to do anything, but because it feels more predictable. The way out isn't to fight this. It's to let your mind adjust. At first, it won't feel natural. You'll notice the urge to move, to check something, to think about something. You'll feel the pull to return to activity, even when there's no reason to. But if you don't follow it, something changes. The urge rises, peaks, and then fades. And when it fades, even slightly, your mind experiences something it hasn't in a while. Space. Not empty in a negative way, but open, unoccupied. Not filled with constant processing. And that space is where relaxation actually begins. Not because you created it intentionally, but because you stopped interrupting it. Over time, your brain starts to recognize this state as safe. It learns that nothing bad happens when you're not constantly engaged, that you're not falling behind, not missing something, not losing control. And as that understanding builds, the resistance weakens. You don't have to push yourself into relaxation anymore. You just don't pull yourself out of it. And slowly, what used to feel uncomfortable starts to feel neutral. Then calm. Then natural. Until one day, you notice something simple. You sit down, nothing is happening, and your mind doesn't immediately try to fill the space. It just stays. And for the first time in a while, you're not waiting for something. You're not preparing for something. You're not replaying anything. You're just there. And that's what real relaxation feels like. Not forced, not controlled, not achieved, just allowed.